Welcome to Game Time with GameOn, a content series where we pull back the curtain for an intimate look at the people behind GameOn. I'm your host, Matt Bailey, CEO at GameOn. This episode's guest is GameOn's Chief Product Officer, Santi Jaramillo. Santi is the former head of sports at Dapper Labs, where he conceived and built NBA Topshop. Santi also spent 10 years at EA Sports, building the FIFA franchise. It's game time. Let's go. Let's dive in a little bit more about who you are and a little bit more about your background. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bogota in Colombia and left Colombia right after graduating from high school. I always wanted to study abroad and so I went to Vancouver in Canada and went to UBC and graduated from there, and then after a job that I didn't really love right after university, maybe like 8 months in, I decided I wanted to make FIFA, and that's then how I ended up in kind of the video game world.
So you decided you wanted to work for FIFA before you got the job?
Yes, I mean, it's a good story. I loved soccer growing up. I played FIFA my entire life when I was a kid, and I remember, I never forget the day I was having lunch with my colleagues and I wasn't, super happy with that job. And I remember telling my friends and saying, I just want to make FIFA. And this is in the early days of because FIFA is made in Vancouver, right? So I just felt there was some kind of serendipity there that, waiting to happen. So I looked up who the sort of main producer, kind of leader for the game was at the time. This is in like 2009 or 2008. And I literally just sent him a message on Facebook saying, hey, this is my name, this is where I'm from. I love the game, I love the sport, and I have good ideas that I know will make the game better. Total just Hail Mary, never expected to hear back. And maybe like 3 weeks later, I still remember he messaged me back on Facebook saying, hey Santiago, good to hear from you. We're always looking for smart football people. I still remember that term. And then he said, stay tuned. And then like 2 weeks later, a recruiter called me up, and then I went and interviewed like 3 times, and then I got an offer, and then I went and I started. This is a gameplay designer and producer, so kind of right in the mix of things, of turning FIFA into the best really football simulation gameplay at the time. And I had no idea how to make a video game. I had no experience. I basically learned everything on the job. But I remember one of the things that I said in the interview with who at the time was the lead gameplay director. He was asking me, okay, well, what else don't you like about the game? And one of the things I said was, when you shoot the ball in FIFA, the ball travels too fast, and that means that there's no moment for you to anticipate the outcome of that shot. That was me just saying that because that's how I felt playing the game. And once I joined, I realized that's actually a very nuanced piece of feedback about a video game experience. And I remember his reaction at the time was like, okay, there's something here that we can mold and teach how to actually make a video game.
You stayed there for quite some time in what seems like the dream job. As a football fan, played it all your life. So it must have been an incredible 10 years. Like when you look back, you must be quite fond of those years.
Yeah.
Like what are one or two of just the best moments, experiencing, building the game, maybe some achievements, top moments at FIFA?
The first few FIFAs that I made were all before digital downloads, right? So people had to go to a store and buy a physical copy. I just remember seeing like stores would open just for the FIFA release. They would open at midnight the previous day because people were just dying to get the game, and they would send us pictures of just lineups around the block in like London and Manchester and Paris and all these places. And I remember just feeling really proud of that moment.
We know that you played FIFA as a kid and you loved sports, but were you a games guy in general? Like, were you a gamer? Yeah.
It's funny, games has changed in so much, right? And since I was playing, but for me, it was a big part of making friends and having a community. I still remember the first time someone in like my neighborhood got I think it was a Super Nintendo, and that's when the first time I played Mario Kart and Street Fighter, and that just blew my mind. Like, obviously playing those now for someone that's playing games today doesn't feel like it's that exciting, but those games definitely just kind of completely broke the paradigm of what kind of video games were at the time, right? Before that, it was just very basic computer games. Then I started getting FIFA every single year and playing it in my sister's room, because my sister, she's older, and so she had the TV and the computer in her room. Now I guess she probably regrets it, because I meant I was in her room more than I'm sure she wanted. But yeah, and I played FIFA like a lot and played it every single year. So I think one of the reasons why I got the job was I really knew kind of where FIFA came from and what things weren't going so well in terms of gameplay and the experience in general. So I wasn't just any kind of fan. I really had kind of thought about that game a little bit more deeply than maybe other people.
Now onto Dapper Labs, back to the career. So you were working at Dapper Labs on Topshop right when you reached out in 2018, when no one really knew what NFTs are. Today, you know, every person is understands it in some capacity. And Topshop is nearing, I think, $1 billion in sales. You know, did you anticipate or expect that level of success when you were working on the project a few years ago?
No. The short answer is no. I don't think anyone did. I always felt very much like a fish out of water when I first joined, right? Because everyone in the company was just so knowledgeable about that space, right? About blockchain, about NFTs, and I didn't really know anything. And so at first I felt very uncomfortable. The comfort zone is really kind of quite explicit in what it means, right? It's like, in order to expand your comfort zone, you actually have to step outside of it and feel uncomfortable until that discomfort feels comfortable. Yeah. That is the only way to expand your comfort zone. It doesn't happen just by kind of thinking about it or intellectually thinking about it. It has to be through doing it. True. And so if you don't feel the discomfort, you're probably not expanding your comfort zone. But to Dapper's credit, I think something that they recognized back then, that I see even companies today in that space not quite seeing it, is that Dapper had the kind of self-reflection of realizing that if they wanted to make mass market, you know, AAA products, they had to bring people who had done that before, and they had to bring people who weren't necessarily crypto, you know, maniacs. They had to bring people who could see it again from the kind of the other side of the fence, because those are the people you're really wanting to bring onto your platform or to buy your product. And I think that's why Dapper has such an advantage over so many other companies today in that space, is because they then built this kind of hybrid that you need, this kind of DNA of having the blockchain expertise, but also, okay, how do you make these products? You need game designers, and you need game producers, and you need project managers that have built these types of products before, and you need someone that, you know, has built, if we want to build sports-based NFTs and gamify that, then let's probably go after someone that's made, you know, AAA sports games and video games, right? And I think that foresight is something that I still think not enough companies are thinking about, and that's why so many of the products in that space feel so rudimentary. Because Dapper kind of knew that, I never felt kind of inadequate by not knowing much about NFTs at the time, but obviously that was the best kind of crash course of learning all about the potential. And yeah, and then, you know, came up with the idea for Topshop and met with the NBA and pitched it, and you know, they liked it, and the rest is history.
And you were there very early as head of sports. You said you know, pitching to the NBA. Like, tell us about the team at that point. Was the product built? Were there technical team? Like,
there was no team. There was no product. The product that Dapper had at the time that kind of put them on the map was CryptoKitties, which again, something for the crypto audience. But that really proved how, you know, what you could do with NFTs and smart contracts, and it also proved that Ethereum as a blockchain platform did not scale. I was the only person in that kind of sports vertical. I partnered closely with the head of partnerships to kind of go on road shows, and you know, she would make kind of first contact, and then I would think about what could we build for X or Y based on what they're after. And then we would go and I would pitch it, and so the idea for Topshop was kind of the one that we talked to the NBA, but you know, also, you know, other kind of leagues, and the NBA were the ones that were just wanted to be the most innovative, the fastest, and really was an amazing collaboration with them. And then once we knew that that was going to be the first product, then we started hiring. First was to kind of craft the visuals for it. So for a long time, the team was literally just me and a UX designer, an interaction designer, and that was it. That's how we kind of started putting together the visuals. And then, once everything was official, then we hired more aggressively, and we hired people to also help us not just build a product like this, but help build a studio within Dapper Labs as a company that could operate more as a gaming studio. And so a lot of kind of my time, even though I definitely enjoy the product side much more, as I'm sure you now know, I did have to kind of spend some time on sort of like the production kind of operation side of things, because again, another thing that Dapper had the foresight for was, okay, the what is one thing, but the how you build, that what is important. And there's a certain skill set and a certain methodology to build those types of products, and bring in the people that would kind of help build those processes, and the org structure and all that kind of stuff for kind of a studio was also part of what I helped with, and what many other people that then we brought on board after helped with.
And then finally, to wrap it up, from a more macro level in the industry we're in, what's the biggest opportunity that you're excited about, to take us and GameOn and our product? What's the biggest opportunity that we can capitalize on?
Well, for me is, kind of like, if I think about, let's say, Dapper at the time, right? And so the opportunity for me was, what are the kind of systems, what are the legacy experiences that are still true in terms of the primary motivations that they tap into for the people that use those experiences, but are still doing things in the same way as before, right? And so collecting is one of those things, right? People still care about collecting. Fandom is something that is timeless, but that didn't change. So when I was at Dapper, thinking of how you can reimagine collecting and bragging rights and all these kinds of things in the digital space, right? And how can you use NFTs to create a different relationship that people can have to digital goods compared to what they've had in the past. Most people think of a predictor game as just an avenue for, I'm just going to go and try and win $1 million by getting a parlay of 10 results and getting them right. And no one gets it right, and no one ever wins that $1 million. And so it's actually that's not the right motivation. People want to connect. People want to have bragging rights. People want to feel recognized. It's all those things that really drive the usage of these types of products, but the products being built are not tapping into those motivations. And so as we think about some of these mechanics, whether it's quests, whether it's prediction, whether it's fantasy, whatever it is, but we think about it from a different angle, in where this is just now almost like a gameplay mechanic, on top of which you can layer the right social, the right meta to create a very, very engaging product. Then you can really disrupt that space the way, let's say, Robinhood disrupted trading, right? It went from being something completely dry, where no one was sharing anything that they were doing, where no one was kind of having an experience, when it comes to stock trading. And that's as dry as it gets, stock trading. Making that change, right, and designing an experience and an app as different from everything else, like Robinhood did, that is kind of what, now everyone's trying to do the same thing, right? Like in every country now, there's some version of Robinhood because of that success. And I think that same type of potential exists in the gamification of content and bringing kind of content and fans together in ways that we just don't see enough yet. Yeah, that tapping into the true motivations that fuel fandom is at the core of what we do because of you, because of what you've created here with our product. And you've taught me so much about it over the last year or so now. So thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for taking a chance with me, someone who's never been in that early stage of a startup and all of that. And it's been a great ride so far.
Stay tuned for more Game Time in 2022.